But hey, let's just jump right in. We'll start with MVP. Why don't you give me some of the names? Don't give me the guy that you're definitely voting for number one right now if you had to. But do you have a short list?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to start with the guy that is my MVP, but we could start with some other people. A sleeper for me is Donovan Mitchell for the way that they're playing and everything we talked about yesterday, the way he's having this team on his back. And then, we saw Darius Garland picking it up early, and now he's picking it up with his late game play and his ability to be a dynamic scorer. So I think with them leading the East, he's definitely up there for me. But it's no doubt Nikola Jokic as my MVP, and I could explain why. Who would you have?
So I guess I have my short list. I've got Jokic, I've got Jason Tatum, I've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and then I have Kevin Durant. Not necessarily on my short list because he just hasn't played in as many games, but the Suns have been awesome with him in the lineup. So he's just like, okay, I'm watching you, Kevin Durant. I'm watching to see, maybe not at the quarter season mark again because of the availability thing, but maybe by the end of the year you can kind of sneak onto these ballots. I understand Jokic though. Like 29.6 points per game, 10.7 assists, 13.2 rebounds. The guy's averaging a triple-double. The only thing with him is Denver's in ninth place right now in the Western Conference. They're 10-8. I know Russell Westbrook won this award a few years ago with the Thunder being, I think they were in sixth place that year. But like, how high would the Nuggets, or maybe the better way to phrase it would be, how low would the Nuggets have to be on the West standings for you to eliminate Jokic as a contender if this is what his stats are by the end of the year?
Yeah, I'm not the guy that puts as much stock on team success as everybody else. And another sleeper guy, I think, who's actually playing better than ever is Giannis. I think he's playing better now than the season he won a championship. Like, he got better in every single way. And I think we love like the older stars like LeBron and Steph and KD. And I think we're always looking to see who's next. But these two guys in their prime, Jokic and Giannis, even though they're not playing on great teams, I mean, they're continuing to get better throughout the course of their career. With Nikola Jokic, I actually got to watch him play in Paris. And to your stats point, I think with Westbrook, it was more about the stats. And I know Westbrook fans will get mad at that. But with Jokic, the stats don't even tell the whole story about the way he plays basketball. Like, he's constantly creating advantages over the course of the game to make his team better. It makes this kind of sounds weird, but he's always playing basketball when he's playing basketball. You see guys like even Luka, Harden, Jason Tatum. Sometimes when they don't have the basketball, or even sometimes on defense, they're not playing basketball. But Jokic is always engaged. And on top of that, I think his defense is really underrated. Rudy has been a 4-time defensive player of the year. And I would argue that Jokic is a better, smarter perimeter defender than Rudy. Like, I've seen him switch out and get a stop on Patty out in the Olympics. I think he's clearly the best player in the NBA, and I think the gap is widening.
I mean, he's been the best guy in the NBA. You could argue longer. To me, it was really sort of solidified in the 2023 championship run. I was like, there's no player even on the same page, not even on the same planet right now as Jokic. And it kind of reminded me like I felt like that was the first time I could say that since like peak LeBron James, where it was like LeBron and then everybody else. And there was like probably almost a 10-year period where that was the case. We're going on maybe half of a decade of, you could argue, Jokic being just far and away the best player in the world. I'm not sure I would go that far. I think there was probably at the beginning of the 2020s, maybe it was Giannis, right? You know, and Joel Embiid has an MVP in that time too. But there is no question now he's far and away the best player in the world. And I joke that like I think he invented advanced metrics, because every single advanced metric on the internet that you could find has had Jokic the best player in the world by a bullet for like the last 3 years. Like, he's just always far and away ducks and threes, EPMs, box score plus minus, net rating this, VORP rating that. Like, he's always number one in every single category. But it does speak to just his general dominance. I love the way that you put that. Always playing basketball, even when he's not necessarily playing basketball. His IQ is so great. Yeah. He's always, like you said, creating advantages. He's the number one advantage creator in the NBA. Yeah. He just has a way of always making sure that either him or his teammates are getting a good shot. Like, any possession down the floor, you're like, yep, we're probably going to get a good shot on this possession. Now, whether or not it goes in, whatever, he can only control so much, but he's always giving them a chance.
Yeah, and I think when we look at these seasons, these are some of the greatest single seasons we've ever seen. I know we could point to Will Chamberlain averaging 50 points, and then Michael Jordan obviously had some incredible seasons, but advanced metrics included, but with the eye test, some of these seasons rival Michael Jordan's best seasons. I know that sounds crazy, but it just really is. Like, just watching him play basketball, look at the stats. He doesn't have nearly as many championships as Michael Jordan. I'm not going to say he's greater than Michael Jordan, but when you put these seasons in a vacuum, they're some of the best I've ever seen.
It feels like minimum, if this guy plays at this level for another 5 years,
yeah,
wins one more championship, has to be top 10 all time.
I got him top 10 basketball player already, personally. And
I know
I don't think maybe the accolades match that right yet because he only has one championship. He has a bunch of MVPs, and he might get 4 out of 5
It would be 4
now?
Yeah,
out of 5, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's. I think there's only 4 guys who have 4, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that puts him in rare air in itself. He wins a couple more championships. He's top 10, and then he can make his way to top 5. And I think he's definitely top 10 already.
I'd probably be with you, but I think most people would probably agree if you got maybe one more ring here.
Yeah.
Again, TBD. I do wonder, winning a 4th MVP, like you already mentioned, that's such rare air. For him to actually win this award, whether or not you and I would have him number 1 on our ballot, for the voting public to put him number 1, I do wonder if there's voter fatigue with Jokic, there's going to be voters ready to just give it to somebody else. If it's even a conversation, you could argue that it shouldn't be a conversation based on the stats and his importance and just the fact that he's the best player on the planet. But you can manufacture that conversation, and I do have some other names of guys who are worthy of being, in consideration on these MVP ballots. But I have a hard time believing that Jokic is going to get the MVP just based on voter behavior if the Nuggets are in the play-in tournament. It feels like they at least have to be a top 6 seed in the West, to me, to trust the voters to give it to him.
Who is clearly more valuable of a player than him, though? That's my only thing. Yeah.
Nobody. But yeah. I just think that, we've been down this road before, and you just don't really see voters reward the MVP for a team that's not a solid playoff team. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe I'm just being overly cynical of the voting booth, but
no, it's a real thing. And probably before the season, I would say you're right, but he's playing even better.
I know, it's crazy.
So that's the thing. I mean, we've even seen it with Michael Jordan, with Karl Malone. Voter fatigue is absolutely a real thing. But he just keeps improving, and he keeps on making it more obvious, and he's almost outplaying the voters' fatigue, in my opinion. And we have to see how the rest of the season goes. Obviously, only a quarter away, but if it goes like this, he's clearly the most valuable player.
So just to clarify, it's 5 guys with at least 4 MVPs. It's Wilt Chamberlain, LeBron James, Bill Russell, Michael Jordan, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. LeBron, they both have 4. Bill Russell has 5. MJ has 5, and Kareem has 6. So
and by the way,
right there.
Wilt has 1 championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That puts him in the Wilt cat. Obviously, he never averaged 50 in a season or dropped 100, even though the 100 is debatable, right? We don't know.
We're not totally sure. Jokic, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Moses Malone all have 3 MVPs. So he's already in that conversation. Magic, Larry Bird, those guys are consensus top 10 guys. Obviously, won more championships, but Jokic still has a lot more chapters to write here. In terms of the other names, I would give real consideration to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander if I had to vote right now. He's averaging 30 points per game, making 50% of his shots, 6.5 assists, 5.5 rebounds, 1.7 steals, 1.1 blocks. He's doing it on both ends. He's not Oklahoma City's best defender. He doesn't have to be, but he's a positive defender on that end. And offensively, he's as good of a shot creator, advantage creator as there is outside of Denver right now. I think he's been awesome in OKC, the number 1 in the Western Conference. I think you have to consider him at least.
I agree with you. I think you definitely have to consider him. I would also say, as much as we're praising Jokic, SGA was actually the best playoff performer in last year's playoffs. They ended their season, their postseason ended a little bit early. But if you just watch what he was doing, he was outplaying Luka. He was better than Tatum and Brown throughout the course of their run. He was just the best playoff performer. And as you said, he's a two-way player, one of the best offensive guards in the league, probably Luka is, but he's up there as well. So I definitely think he should be a consideration. I agree with you.
Tatum is the other guy. The Celtics are world beaters right now. They look great. They're second in the Eastern Conference, 28, 8, and 6, basically. Turnovers have been a little bit of a concern. I don't know that I'm watching Jason Tatum at any point this season. I'm watching the best guy in the NBA right now. I never really feel like that, not even for a game. Some of these guys can sort of uncork like a big game where you're like, wow, I don't know that I've ever seen anybody this year play a better game than this guy, whoever that guy might be. Tatum has not really made me feel like that yet, but he's the best player on arguably the best team. I just feel like those guys at least have to be mentioned here. And then the other guy I'm at least looking at, again, has not deserved it a quarter through the season. I'm just watching Luka. I know all his stats are down. He does not deserve to be in this conversation whatsoever right now. But the Mavericks are top 10 in offensive rating, top 10 in defensive rating. There's a lot of stuff if you look under the hood that this Mavericks team might be a little bit better than what they've shown all season long. They're on a little bit of a run right now. Like if Luka kind of gets things going here, the way that we know he can. I mean, he entered the year as the MVP favorite on most sports betting books. Right. I think he's due just for some sort of reversion to the mean. And there's going to be like a month that he puts together where all the talking heads are going to be like, Luka's the MVP of the year.
Yeah, I think that's true. I would also say that the narrative around him is probably not great. They always say he doesn't come into the season in shape. And now with them playing really well without him, that doesn't help him either. But over the course of the whole season, I think he could definitely pick it up. Well, we've seen him have like a 70-point game last year. So he could go on a stretch like that and be back in the conversation. And we probably remember the end of the season more than the beginning of the season, right? So, so you never know with him. But I don't think this is helping him, them playing this well without him. But, man, he's just the best offensive wing we've ever seen. Whatever he is, wing, point guard, whatever. Who knows what he is.
Yeah, he's due for a breakout, right? And
I think that's also the other thing. Like people expect like he has to win one at some point, right? So
it's almost the opposite of Jokic, where I feel like if Jokic were to win it, voters would almost like be reluctantly admitting like nobody else deserves it. He's the best. Like we don't feel great about giving him a fourth MVP because it's such rarefied air and he only has one championship. But man, it's undeniable. Where it almost feels like the voters are like ready to give it to Luka. Right. Like as soon as he's almost deserving, it's like, you're the guy. For the record, I would have voted Luka last year, MVP. I had him number one on my ballot. I thought he was the MVP of the league last year. But Jokic ended up getting that one too.